Hey there, you ever heard that saying, money can't buy happiness? We've all heard it, right? But have you ever, actually wondered if it's true?
It's interesting, right? Because so many people are trying to achieve financial stability. But what happens when money's no longer an issue? Does wealth really equal happiness?
Yeah, and that's what we're diving into today, the less glamorous side of affluence. The stuff no one really talks about.
What's fascinating is that for many ultra-wealthy people, they're stuck in this, endless race.
It's like they're running a race they can't win.
Exactly. Imagine being trapped in a race you can't seem to win. That's the reality for many people at that level of wealth.
Because it's not even about paying the bills at that point, is it? It's about, maintaining a certain lifestyle, keeping up with a certain crowd.
Yeah, and the finish line keeps moving. It goes from being about security to suddenly it's all about status. It becomes an endless pursuit.
Okay, so let's get into the psychology of all this. Expert, can you tell us about hedonic adaptation? It's something I gotta admit I've definitely experienced.
Oh, we all have. Think about that feeling you get with a brand new phone, like the one you just have to have. It's so exciting, right? But then a few weeks pass and it's just your phone.
Ugh, don't remind me. That new phone smell never lasts. So how does this, apply to people who have, a lot of money?
Well, now imagine that feeling, but on a much larger scale. Think mansions, private jets, that kind of thing. That's hedonic adaptation. Their brains, just like ours, adapt, and then they're looking for that next source of excitement.
So you're saying even if you have unlimited resources, that feeling of getting something new fades away?
That's exactly it. And behavioral economists have been studying this, for decades now. And it's clear, money past a certain point doesn't guarantee happiness. There was a study actually by Northwestern University, and they found that people who won the lottery, they went back to their normal levels of happiness, after that initial high, after just 1 year.
A year. Wow. So even though having money is, obviously important, it doesn't necessarily lead to being, really happy or fulfilled.
You got it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Money is important. It gives you security and it lets you do things, right? But these studies are showing us that once you have your basic needs met, having more money doesn't really make you feel better.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly. Food, shelter, that sense of belonging, those are the important ones. And once those are met, we naturally start looking for fulfillment in other places, things that money can't really buy.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then if it's not about getting more money, what is it that drives these super wealthy people to keep striving for more?
It's complicated because now we're getting into how people see themselves.
Yeah.
It's the social dynamics. For a lot of wealthy people, their self-worth is tied to how much money they have. It's like they've been trained to think that success equals a bigger bank account.
They're stuck in this cycle of chasing a high that they know won't last.
Sadly, yes. Always looking for that next big thing, adding another zero to their account. But they never really find what they're looking for.
So it's not about being greedy. It's more like they have a distorted view of what it means to be successful.
That's it, exactly. And that's where things get interesting, because that way of thinking starts to affect everything, not just their own mindset, but also their relationships, even how they interact with other people. And that's something we'll dig into that a bit later.
So we're talking about how for some people, money doesn't actually lead to happiness, right? But then there's this whole other layer of social pressure that comes with wealth.
It's huge. Imagine, your whole social circle measures success by who has the rarest art or who vacations on the most exclusive island.
It's like keeping up with the Joneses, but on steroids, right?
Exactly. It's like this unspoken competition. And that kind of pressure, you can get to anyone. Even if you're used to a certain lifestyle, it's still stressful.
And then, how do you even know if you have real friends? Or are they just friends with your money?
That's the thing. There's a reason people say it's lonely at the top. Because when your life is all about wealth, it's hard to tell who's being genuine,
You start to second guess everyone's motives.
Right. And that suspicion, it makes it hard to trust people, to open up. And that's when, even if you're surrounded by people, you can end up feeling really isolated.
It's like having all that money might actually make it harder to connect with people.
In a way, yeah. And that brings us to another important point, mental health. There's this idea that if you're wealthy, you're immune to things like anxiety or depression.
Yeah, what do you have to worry about, right? But it's obviously more complicated than that.
Way more complicated. Studies actually show that people with higher incomes, they often experience higher levels of stress too.
Really? That's so interesting, because you'd think it'd be the opposite.
You would, but their worries are just different. They might be stressed about lawsuits, protecting their money or their kids, making sure their kids aren't taken advantage of. That fear of losing everything, it can be really intense.
And on top of that, there's the pressure to keep making more money. It's like you can never relax.
Exactly. And then you have this thing called success guilt.
Success guilt. What's that?
It's this feeling you get when, like, you've achieved your dreams, right? You have all this success, but then you see people around you, maybe friends or family, who are struggling. And you feel guilty, like you don't deserve your good fortune, or like you succeeded at their expense.
That's got to be tough. It's like a no-win situation.
It can be.
Yeah.
And so people try to downplay their success, or they distance themselves from anyone who makes them feel guilty.
Wow. So instead of feeling like a blessing, their wealth is kind of like a burden in a way.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's complex. But what's important is that we understand this. Wealth doesn't equal happiness.
So then where do we go from here? Because even if we're not, rolling in money, it's easy to fall into that trap of wanting more.
Yeah.
It's like no matter how much you have, it's never enough,
It's a very human thing, right? And society just makes it worse. But what if we could like redefine what success looks like? Not just focusing on money.
Right. Like what if real success is more about, having good relationships and following your passions, stuff like that.
Exactly. Finding joy in experiences, being connected to people, giving back to your community. Imagine if you could decide what success means to you. Like not letting those materialistic values define it for you.
I love that, but honestly, it feels like we're constantly being told that we need more stuff. Like to be happy, I catch myself getting sucked in, even when I know it's not the whole picture.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so much pressure to consume. But that's why it's so important to really pay attention to those messages we're getting. And ask yourself the tough questions. What's important to me? What do I want to leave behind?
Last year I was feeling so burned out. I'd achieved some big goals, but I just felt kind of empty. And I realized that I was so busy chasing the next thing that I wasn't even enjoying what I had.
Wow. That's a really powerful realization. And it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about. This isn't about judging anyone. It's about like being more aware of how we define success. Because maybe true happiness is in those simpler things like spending time with people you care about or, doing what you love.
So it's about like opting out of the rat race. Instead of playing a game you can't win, maybe find a different game altogether.
Yes. Create a life that has meaning to you, not based on what someone else says is important.
That's such a good point. This has given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's done the same for you. So here's something to think about. If you could stop chasing more, what would your life look like? What really matters to you? Until next time, keep diving.